camping, gen rushing, slugging, immersing, tunneling. Dead by Daylight has many playstyles that a lot of us would consider as toxic. But have you wondered, what were the most miserable experiences, even worse than tunneling or gen rushing, that you could be subjected to? Well, let's take a look at the most hated, the most disgusting builds and playstyles that even behavior had to step in to fix. And let's start the video with what is potentially the playstyle most of us are familiar with, as it was relatively recent when it got popularized. I am talking about the chess merchant playstyle, the bane of the 3 generators, and the reason many players still hate Skull Merchant even though the problem is fixed already. Chess Merchant was just the combination of 3 things all mixed in one. The first problem was the gen kick meta, which is considered by many, including myself, to be one of the worst metas the game has ever had. Perks like Call of Brine, Overcharge and Eruption were very strong at slowing the game down and removing the progress of the repairs, and you could use this build on anyone you wanted and still get value, making it one of the most popular builds used by far. Combine this build with the Skull Merchant's original kit, which worked in a different way. Her drones scanned an entire area around them instead of being based on line of sight, and these areas would give you the exposed status effect as well as reveal your location. You might think that the easy counter was to just crouch and avoid the lasers with smart movement, but the Skull Merchant could activate those drones remotely, and also the scan areas had infinite height, meaning that if you put a drone in the basement, it would scan the entire shack from top to bottom, making her drones extremely strong on 2-floor maps like the game or Midwich. If we wanted to make things even harder for survivors, Skull Merchant also came with add-ons focused on skill checks, proving that this playstyle was something the devs actually intended. The end result was a killer so powerful in regressing the generators and defending an area that it was almost unbeatable by the strongest competitive team in the world. So imagine facing this as a solo queue player with no coordination. The point was not sacrificing anyone, it was stalling the match enough where it would automatically end because it reached the hour mark, as it would give a win to the killer by default. This was so problematic that behavior had to completely gut every single aspect of this playstyle. This is the reason why Call of Brine and Overcharge are mediocre. Skull Merchant got the fastest power rework out of all killers released in the game, and behavior introduced the entity blocker mechanic to prevent gens from being kicked many times. Another build which is quite popular and many people will remember, especially the veterans, is what is commonly known as the Forever Freddy build, which is very similar in nature to the Skull Merchant playstyle. What Forever Freddy was is a build centered around making the gen progress so extremely slow that it made an already boring objective against a boring killer even more boring. This was because Freddy was the only character who had add-ons that directly applied a slow penalty to those affected, which was the Swing Chains, who could add a total of 12% of slowdown if all survivors were asleep, combined with Jump Rope, which added an extra 9% on top, meaning that just with the add-ons, all asleep survivors would have a 21% penalty on repairing generators and all other actions. Now combine this with Thanatophobia at its best, which added a 5% penalty speed globally for each survivor injured, which would amount to a 20% extra, and add in the pre-nerf Sloppy Butcher, which gave survivors the mangled and hemorrhage effect indefinitely until they heal themselves. To make things worse, add a sprinkle of Dying Light, which would also give a stackable 3% speed penalty each time you hooked anyone who was not your obsession, and finally, the gen regression perk of your choice just to revert any progress that the survivors tried to do. And that's how you would get Forever Freddy, a killer that at best could make the gen repair penalty even stronger than having the current effect of Pentimento active, and all of that passively just by playing the match and chasing survivors, and there was nothing survivors could do. If you repaired and didn't heal, gens would be extremely slow. If you tried to heal yourself, your healing would be slower, and no gens are being repaired. It was a lose-lose situation for survivors, which actually led Freddy to have the highest kill rate in the entire game for a surprisingly long time, which is the reason why the current Freddy got nerfed so hard, as well as Thanatophobia got gutted. Nowadays, the effect of the add-ons is just a niche, almost meme tier effect, and this was all because of Forever Freddy. But Freddy and Skull Merchant are not the only characters that got extremely popular because of a specific playstyle which was tremendously strong on them, and just by mentioning Sadako, you probably already know where this part is going. Let's talk about the original condemned playstyle of Sadako, fondly remembered by many as the playstyle that was one of the most miserable in the game, as it combined slugging along with an extremely strong build centered around it. When Sadako first released, many players saw her as an immediate C-tier killer capable of nothing. Her condemnation was considered by many as a joke, since it was really easy to counter, and she had nothing to offer as she had mediocre stealth, barely any chase capability, and you could turn off her TVs by being smart. But it was thanks to the Sadako mains who never gave up on her, like One Pump Willy, who discovered the true potential of Sadako. By using her original iridescent tape add-on, which turned on the last 4 TVs you teleported to as long as you hit a survivor after manifesting, these players found out that they could pressure the entire map at all times and constantly teleport to the same TVs and keep stacking condemned on survivors passively, forcing them to grab a tape. However, her power also worked in a different way, as when you picked up a tape, you had to put it in the furthest TV possible, and you could still keep getting condemned stacks even with it in your hands. This meant that a smart Sadako could know which TV belongs to you and constantly prevent you from putting the tape back, all while the passive condemned from the tape filled up your progress. And add in the ring drawing add-on, which originally gave a condemned stack to any survivors healing others, and that meant that any survivor attempting to heal a slugged survivor would also get a stack of condemned on top. This meant that there was zero requirement for Sadako players to hook anyone, as all they had to do is slug survivors that picked up tapes, force others to come to their rescue, and keep teleporting and passively stack condemned. Survivors had no time to repair or do anything, because the moment they did, they would all die to condemned at 7 stacks. This build was basically unbeatable and extremely annoying for survivors, as they would die with 0 counters and would just keep being on the ground, a gameplay I am sure many find interactive. This playstyle was extremely strong, but admittedly hard, as you needed to play on a macro level, a skill not many killer players have, which is the reason Sadako still was a C-tier killer despite having this playstyle available. However, it was simply too strong, and so Behavior decided to completely rework Sadako with 3 different changes, with the first one leading her to be an A-tier killer for a while, as she was a complete noob stomper. Then she got nerfed again, and finally, we got the Sadako we have nowadays, a mix between the original and the reworked version. So you might be thinking that Sadako, Freddy and Skull Merchant were poorly designed killers, and I would agree. But all of them required a certain build and add-on combination to work. However, the next playstyle was so bad, so toxic, that a lot of us veterans still remember how miserable the experience was back in the days, and that playstyle is the Moonwalk Legion, which was possible thanks to an oversight made by Behavior. So back when Legion released, they worked in a completely different way. For starters, they were 110% speed, the same as characters like the Huntress or Deathslinger. There was no great add-ons to use like today, and you also couldn't chain 5 hits in order to down someone. Instead, you had to constantly hit survivors with the frenzy to down them, but this would result in 2 long chases, and would eventually make you lose. That is, when the player base found a massive oversight in the deep wound mechanic. Nowadays, deep wound will not go down if you are running or mending yourself, but originally, deep wound would not go down if you were in a chase with the killer, no matter if you walked or ran. And so what the Legion players found is that by chasing you while looking back, the chase would not start since you are not found in their screen, and thus the game would not recognize this as a chase and the music wouldn't start. This meant that Legion would essentially be on top of you and you would go down with time with absolutely no counter a survivor could do. If you mended, Legion would just come close and hit you. If you didn't mend, you would go down automatically. So there was literally no counterplay possible for this tactic, it was a matter of time. However, despite all of this, the Legion still had insanely long chases, zero map presence and control, so this was a paradox of having an extremely weak killer and literally an uncounterable killer stronger than the nerfs at the same time, the blueprint of a horrible design. This was, of course, fixed with a later patch where the Legion got a rework to their power to not make them as oppressive in the 1 vs 1, and also where they changed the deep wound mechanic to work based on tear radius, which still led to problems as you could now bleed out survivors by using characters like Freddy, Pig or Wraith who had no tear radius. However, the moonwalking playstyle of Legion was fixed. Now obviously, the devs didn't intend for players to play the Legion that way, but this was not the last time a mechanic by behavior backfired on them due to poor design. Let's talk about the Cenobite, a character which fits perfectly for the topic of this video. As you might already know, Cenobite is a very strong solo queue destroyer due to the lament configuration mechanic, and if you have a lot of skill, you can do a playstyle which allows you to constantly chain the chain hunts as long as you know what you're doing and you understand the fundamentals of Cenobite's power. But that takes way too much skill. How about a build that allows you to have infinite chain hunts without you having to do much? Well, this is how the most evil build was created, popularized by Coconut RTS. The build was pretty simple, and it all revolved around two mechanics. The first one was the perk by the knight called Hex, Face the Darkness, which made all survivors not in your tear radius constantly scream after a certain interval of time, cancelling all the actions they were doing as long as one survivor is injured. Then, add in Sloppy Butcher to make that survivor take longer to heal, and anytime they scream, the hemorrhage would remove the progress of the healing. Now combine this with Thrill of the Hunt to make totems take longer to cleanse, Insidious so you have no tear radius, and Go Camp the Lament configuration so survivors cannot end the chain hunt. This would lead to survivors constantly screaming, stopping their healing and repair progress, as well as resetting their progress while cleansing any totems. And since you were camping the box, this made it impossible for survivors to end the chain hunt, which made repairing gens a misery as you would constantly get attacked by chains no matter what you were doing. It was almost impossible to repair, to heal, to cleanse. You could do nothing other than endure and keep repairing gens, and God forbid you missed a skill check due to screaming or due to a random chain. As you might guess, this build was an absolute misery to play against, as it had zero skill. It was just an annoying way to make all players lose their time, because eventually survivors could just power through gens. It would just take them a long time. In order to fix this issue, behavior made it so that if you stay around the lament configuration for too long, the box would teleport away, removing this playstyle entirely from the game. But you know, all of these playstyles actually take a bit of effort in order to get results. You still have to chase survivors after all, regress generators, and just be active in the match. How about a build where you can just AFK and still get results? Say hi to AFK Pig, a build so popular back in the days that it forced behavior to rework the way her jigsaw boxes worked. The gist of this build was actually even more simple than all of the playstyles mentioned before. All you had to do is use the iridescent tape of the pig, which made all survivors spawn with the trap already in the head. Then, just sit right next to a jigsaw box to block any survivors attempting to get a key from it, and voila! You basically had a guaranteed kill by doing absolutely nothing, where you could technically win just by crouching AFK. And in fact, mathematically speaking, there was a chance for all survivors to get your box in specific, meaning you could literally get a 4K by being AFK, all because the boxes worked on an RNG factor as the game decided which box had the key at the start of the match. What is funny is that a coordinated team could escape even against this tactic, as they would have to keep the generators 99'd, remove all the head traps possible, and then make sure to let any trapped survivors still in the match to escape through the hatch. But of course, this would require some insane coordination in solo queue, something which is almost as rare as seeing a unicorn with your own eyes. The solution to this problem was pretty simple, which was adding an extra jigsaw box to the match just so the pig could never block one of them constantly, and also make it not RNG based and instead search based, allowing every single survivor a chance to remove their traps without pig camping one of the boxes. So all the playstyles I talked about were completely removed from the game. There is no chest merchant, forever Freddy's, or any of the other examples, and if they are attempted nowadays, the results pale in comparison to the actual real deal. But would you like to know one playstyle which almost no one is talking about? A playstyle that is so disgusting, it's actually shocking that it's still in the game. And the best part, a playstyle that you can try now. Well, say hi to a perk called Game Afoot, a perk from the Skull Merchant which works in a very curious way. This perk will automatically make the survivor you chase the most on the match as the obsession, and also give you a speed boost anytime you break pallets. By itself, it seems like a weird perk, but nothing out of the ordinary. But the magic happens when you combine this bad boy with Rancor, and now suddenly you have more chances to moray survivors in the endgame without them being able to do anything. And now combine these two perks with Noed in order to instantly down them in the end, and No Way Out to add a bit of extra time during the endgame. Put this all on a stealth killer like the Wraith and stand completely AFK until the last generator is done. Since you didn't chase a single survivor in the entire match, the first survivor you chase will automatically become your obsession. And you know what that means? An instant mori with the survivors not being able to do absolutely nothing. The funniest part of this build is that even if you get a 4K, you and the survivors barely get any blood points. This build and playstyle literally exists to make the match for the survivors miserable and make them lose their items. There is nothing interactive about this build, no skill expression. This is a nasty, absolutely toxic playstyle that might get patched in the future. And these are some of the most disgusting toxic playstyles that were found in the game, not counting the mess that the original DBD in 2016 was. Let me know in the comments if you ever played against or used any of these builds. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.